In Chapter 4, we're going to look at how sample surveys occur and play out in the real world. So I want you to take a look at these two questions. Would you favor economic incentives for recycling of resource-intensive consumer goods, even if it will raise taxes? Or the question, in view of the escalating environmental degradation and incipient resource depletion, would you favor economic incentives for recycling of resource-intensive consumer goods? Both of those questions are asking about what you would be willing to pay for and or receive for recycling. But you can see that the two questions are very, very different in terms of the connotation and in terms of the emotion that it's going to elicit from people. Another thing you can look at is in this April 2018 Gallup poll. There were two questions about the amount one pays in federal income taxes. Do you consider the amount of federal income tax you have to pay as too high, about right, or too low? Versus, do you regard the income tax you will have to pay this year as fair? Notice what happens in this result. The same poll, the same people, got very different responses. 48% said that the income tax was about right, 45% said too high, but yet 61% said that it was fair. And so those results don't seem to correspond the way that you would expect, because it all has to do with the way the questions were worded. We can even continue to look at this opinion poll where we had 1,000 people chosen at random. We look at the results, we get a margin of error. Now, it sounds very statistically sound here, but we need to be careful that just because something sounds statistical doesn't necessarily mean that it was performed in a way that the results are going to be useful to us. We don't always know the truth about the samples. The Pew Research Center for the People and the Press, they often will do a good job explaining how the samples were obtained so that we can see if these results are useful and if these results are reflective of the population. But you'll notice in surveys done by telephone that you'll often get a lot of people who never answer their phone, who answer the phone but refuse to respond to the survey. You have several people who are contacted who, for reasons of age or language, cannot participate. Some people don't complete the interview. And so out of 2,879 people, only 1,000 were actually interviewed. We need to consider what those remaining 1,879 people believed, because they're not represented in the sample. And is there something about this particular group of people who did not participate that we need to know about? And this is just that same question or that same information, but putting that into a percentage. 33% of the people contacted never answered. Of those who did answer, 35 refused to talk. And so when we ultimately get down to our survey results, we really have not included everybody that we were trying to call. So even though we do have a large enough sample, can we really trust the results of the poll to make conclusions about people with residential phones? What about people with cell phones? Questions like that are what we're going to try to consider in this chapter.